You are listening to Pause. We pause for a second or two. This is episode 56. Specific skill, tension. All the time, in almost everything we do, we accumulate tension. These days, tension seems to be everywhere. Everybody seems to be tense. It is almost as if the tension is so common. It is almost in every moment. And it is almost as if this constant tension makes us blind to the tension. When we become blind to tension, we sort of lose touch with how influential tension really is over the outcomes of our difficult situations. Today's episode is called Specific Skill Tension. And tension is a skill that is specific for our acute situation. Just like if you imagine this sort of metal spring, you know, the ones that are in beds and in different mechanics, this metal spring. And as tension builds up, if you pull each end of the spring and you pull it really far, so the spring is very tense, then it doesn't take much, because if you lose your grip of this spring, it will violently cause this acute force, this acute situation. It will spring back violently and quickly. So, in a similar manner, this metaphor is much how it works in our day-to-day life. I have built up tension in me. You have built up tension in you. So when we meet, our meeting becomes something like the metal spring I just described. So you and I both become like one of the two hands holding this string. And something seemingly small can elicit this sort of tension to spring back or to be decharged, if you will. And the result is that something acute happens, something sudden, something potentially dangerous or violent. And this is the case situation to situation in these days when people are very tense and when people from very different circumstances are very tense. People with very different ideas of a lot. You can almost feel how close this sort of release of tension is just beneath the surface. And it is very tiresome to live in day to day. For all of us. Specific skill tension has two parts to it. The first part has to do with how we can notice and recognize tension in any given situation. And the second part is how we can take care of our tension individually as we are at home. And I will start with the second part, because we need to start with the second part. The second part of specific skill tension is what we can do to take care of our tension as we are by ourselves at home. And what can be done about it is that as we are by ourselves at home, we can afford to recognize the tension in our bodies and the tension in our thoughts and the tension in our emotions and desires. As we are by ourselves at home, we feel safe enough to recognize it more honestly. If we are with other people, this will not be as easy and maybe impossible. But now we are by ourselves at home. It's just you. You are at home. And there are different ways to go about this. And I would suggest that you go about it in a way that feels intuitive to you. But for me, what works the best is to address tension by addressing the tension in my body physical tension. Physical tension is in some ways the easiest to recognize because it does not feel as stigmatized or as shameful as tensions in thoughts, emotions, and desires may feel. So, if I address the tension in my body, I will have an easier time to just look at the tension and not judge myself as harshly. It's simply the easiest way, I think. So, as I recommend for other skills as well, I would recommend lying down on a carpet. The carpet is soft enough to not make our joints and bones ache too much, but at the same time, a carpet on the floor is hard enough for us to really get in touch with the tension in our body. So just lie down on your carpet and do it by yourself, so you don't start second guessing yourself or becoming self-aware. Just lie down on this carpet and shift around a little. Lie on your back, lie on your stomach, lie on your left side, and lie on your right side. And, try some different postures. It's not super important how you lie there, just that you sort of get a sense of your weight and your body and the pain and tension in your body. And, do this in as informally as you can. Just kind of lie there. It's not rocket science. Just lie there. And spend some time on your carpet. Half an hour, I don't know. And do it, every now and then. So this is the first part, or second part, of specific skill tension. To just sort of get in touch with our own tension in our body. And if we do this regularly, we will sort of, after some time, we will start to get a sense of this sort of, almost like a mapping of our body, like a tension mapping of our body. Everything from legs to torso to arms to neck to head. The whole body. Tension is accumulating in all parts of our body all the time. And tension in different parts of our body feels different and has different effects on what kind of acute situations the tension causes. And this is actually very interesting to map and to sort of see the causal relationships between what kind of tension in my body elicits what kind of acute situation with other people. So do your own mapping. of the tension in your body and have fun with it. It's very interesting once we start to get the feel of it. That leads us to the first part of specific skill tension. The first part of specific skill tension is the part we think we should start with, but it's actually the other way around, as I just described. So now you have sort of started mapping how you experience tension in your body. And now, for this first part or second, depending on how we see it, you will just go about your life. You will just meet people as you normally do. And as you start mapping the tensions in your body, you will start to see tension in others' bodies as well. So, for example, say that you, at one day, you feel very uncomfortable during something, a meeting of sorts, and you can feel that your shoulders are tensing. You are pulling up your shoulders in this meeting. You want to hide. There's something in this meeting that making you extremely uncomfortable. And then, as you have this habit of recognizing the tension in your body, you will afterwards feel that you have pain in your shoulders and how that makes you feel. And then, at a later point, you may meet another person. And you can see how that person's shoulders are pulled up just the same way as yours were at the earlier point. And you will sort of have this intuitive sense. It's not intellectual. It's this sort of intuitive sense between you and other people, that you just know how that tension feels. And if you notice the tense shoulders in the other person, and then you and the other person look each other in the eye, then both you and the other person will sort of establish this very natural and casual bond. It's very de-escalating what happens. It's sort of, it works like this, that once you start recognizing specific tensions in you, and you also notice the same kinds of tensions in other people, then it has the effect that this sort of metal spring I was talking about, once you do these two things, you recognize the tension in yourself and you recognize the tension in the other person, then this sort of built up tension, the built up potential in the spring, in the metal spring, so to speak, the dynamics between you and the other person, that sort of tension will, in a very calm kind of way, just release on its own, in a way that does not result in an acute, sudden, violent situation. It just diffuses the tension. And what usually happens then is that both you and the other person, instead of having an acute situation, instead of something sudden and unpleasant happening, it feels more like you and the other person might become a little tired or a little sad, or this faint feeling of feeling sort of fatigued and a little bummed out. So it's sort of like instead of having something very violent happening, it just diffuses the situation and becomes kind of tired and profound. There's this sort of connection happening between you and the other person. And the best part about it is that you and the other person, by sharing this sort of tension understanding, so to speak, it builds this sort of wordless trust between the two of you. So it creates this sort of intuitive connection that you get one another. And it's the kind of connection, it's the kind of trust being built that sort of diffuses situations before they even happen going forward. In closing words, I would say that tension is something we often speak of as something we do not want, something we try to run away from or minimize. But tension has this great potential for us to build rapport, for us to build trust and this sort of deep connection. Tension can be very useful if we just have the courage, perhaps, or the determination to just recognize tension and to see that it has use. And a lot of acute situations happening, and a lot of acute situations that have the potential of happening now as the times become ever more violent. To map and become more friends with tension is a very useful skill to have. It will prove increasingly useful. That's it for today. Thank you.